Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Womenemies Podcast. We're really excited to have you here today. And I have an exciting guest, the domestic engineer, also known as Caroline Gaynes. And I'm going to let her share her background, but I have had the privilege and do have the privilege of calling her my aunt. So I've been raised around her, and she has a background in entertainment, has worked for big companies such as Disney, has worked around the globe and studied around the United States, and has also coined the term, which I love on LinkedIn, domestic engineer. So we're going to get all into that now. So, Carol, so excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So, I just talked to us a little bit prior to being a mom and domestic engineer. Share your background, your schooling, career path, work experience.
Yes, I got a Bachelor of Arts in college in international relations and French. And then I came back home for a little bit and just worked some jobs. And then I went to business school, international. I got an MIBS, which is a Master's of International Business Studies. And that's how I ended up having an internship in Colombia at a local film company,
Colombia
which is what
country.
Yeah, as in Bogota. I was living mostly in Bogota, and which I
Awesome.
loved. And then because of that, I ended up moving to Los Angeles and getting a job at an independent film company. So I worked there for a few years, and then I worked at Disney the rest of the time that I've been here in Los Angeles. So that is my career.
Incredible, incredible. Kudos to you. A lot of hard work that goes into that.
Several-
Every journey to motherhood is exciting and has its ups, downs, and surprises and excitements. You want to share some about your personal journey?
Yes. I was very lucky. Right before I got married, this is going to sound counterintuitive, but I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so we did have to wait a couple of years because of the various treatments before we could try. But once we actually started trying, I got pregnant almost back to back right away. So yeah, it was and no complications, nothing. So I was very lucky, but that means we did have kids a little bit later than we might have, but again, no problems. So, and I was working at the time. Um and I enjoyed being pregnant. I never felt like people always say, "Oh my God, I just want this to be over with." I never felt that way. So again, I consider myself really lucky. And I have two daughters now, so who are 23 and 22.
I can't
So
believe.
really back to back. I
Yeah.
know.
I will say from I was in college when you called me to say you were pregnant, and I knew that the doctors had said, wait a couple years because you had, gone through the breast cancer and everything was good, but the chemotherapy and so forth. And when you got pregnant so quickly, I was really excited, and they're lovely daughters. And it's great that you said that you were lucky, and a lot of people are lucky when they get pregnant under any circumstance. So thank you for saying that. And that's an incredible story. So and while you were pregnant, and while I like to say you were working outside of the home, because also in the home we work, when you're working outside of the home in your job, what was it like? Was there any transitions for you while you were being pregnant and working in your current position?
Transitions like,
Did you
no,
feel like did you have any worries, any pressures when you had to tell them that you were pregnant, that you were expecting? Did you feel any differently? Not in the way that they treated you, but just, you were expecting a life inside of you, and you were also working full time outside of the home.
I didn't. The only kind of funny story was that for whatever reason, I waited so long to tell people just because I felt like it was my little secret or something. And the first pregnancy I didn't show until like 5 months or something, but I had no problems with work. The
Yeah.
second pregnancy, also no problems with work, but I started showing almost instantly, and trying to keep it a secret was not possible. So, but no, there wasn't any. I mean, I always kind of kick myself because between the cancer and being pregnant, I could have taken advantage of it in a fair way that, they
Right.
would have given me a lot of time, but I kept thinking, no, 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 let's wait until I'm really feeling bad. I'm really feeling bad. And I was never feeling bad. So again, very lucky. But, but I also had a lot, I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but I had a lot of vacation time banked because at that time it was sort of grandfathered in. And,
Mhm.
so I was also lucky in that I took a lot of time for my maternity leave, which I know is not normal. I mean, most people in the United States have to go back pretty quickly. So
Thank you
it
for
was
bringing
just,
yeah, it is, and it's great to be in companies where there is a longer protection because California is the most protected state. I know federal law gives 16 weeks, but California has a lot of protections, but I know a lot of people go back even 2 or 3 months and so forth, so that's
yeah.
hard. Before we get to when you delivered your beautiful babies, was there anything internally like worry or emotions when you were pregnant about how am I going to balance it all or anything like that? Or was it just, okay, I just have a human being growing in me and I'll figure it out when it comes? Because everyone handles it differently.
Yeah. I mean, I won't say I was never concerned or worried. I mean, in general, I'm kind of a nervous person. So I would worry about work, but I have to admit that being pregnant didn't add to that. Whatever I would be worried about with work, I would be worried about anyway, whether I
Right.
was pregnant or not.
Right.
So I can't say that added a lot of concern. And I'm trying to think like I think I was less concerned at the time about balancing everything and more concerned about that there was going to be this third person, the first pregnancy, this third person in the household. That was kind of
Yeah.
strange, that idea. But no, I can't say that work really changed that much for me.
Right. That no, that's good. And the fact that one of the worries is also outside of your career, the worries that another human being is coming into your lives and not knowing exactly what to expect. That's something that's common that's heard. Was in your place of business, did you see other women who were mothers, who were pregnant, who were mothers after the fact of children in all stages of life? So had you seen other people take maternity leave? Was there a lot of representation there?
Well, actually, my colleague, she was pregnant before I was, and she took
Mhm.
maternity leave. But it was kind of an odd time, so it's hard to. It was right when our department was in the middle of a transition. So she was just kind of glad that she was at home and not at work seeing all this like weird stuff going on. But the one thing I will say, and I feel like I keep jumping ahead, but that I
This is
do remember very clearly is that I did know certain women who had worked there and then decided to quit to stay home with their kids.
mhm.
And I remember running into one woman one time and she was like, "Oh my God, I would give anything to be going to a meeting at work right now, work outside the home."
Yeah.
Because, like, pretty much universally, everybody was like, this ain't easy. I mean, it's not that their work was easy, but it was easier going to their job than staying at home. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
That's a great thank you for sharing that because that's the message this podcast and my work is trying is that they're both jobs in and out of the home and also we need a mental break and 24/7 stay-at-home moms don't get that, which you know very well. Okay. One question I want to ask while you were pregnant, and it doesn't have to be from people that you were colleagues with, it could be friends, family, society at that time. Did anyone ask you, "Oh, are you gonna go back? Are you gonna return to work after you have the kid?" Because there seemed to a lot of people get those questions, and it was more frequent maybe a couple decades ago, a decade and 2 ago. So I
Yeah.
wanted to ask if you got that frequently or not.
I didn't, but I think it's that my circle of friends all just kind of assumed that I would go back to working outside the home.
That's great.
There was never a question about that
That's
for me
impressive.
or for them. So
Great.
No, the short answer is no. Yeah.
That's great to hear. You hear it from all different aspects, and I know when I was pregnant, I got asked that, so I just always like to hear that other people's journeys and experience. When the child arrived and the children, because you had 2, talk about the mental load and while you're on maternity leave, the mental load and the emotional stress, because now you have a 3rd and then a 4th depending on which child you're talking about in the home. Talk about that mental load or any changes that happened instantly when you became a mother that, you weren't expecting.
Well, it's funny because I did have another colleague who had 2 boys, and it was kind of the same thing. She had them kind of back to back, but a little bit before me.
Yeah.
And both of us pre-kids did work long hours.
Yes.
And then once we, had to go back to working outside the home and having daycare or babysitters or whatever we had, we kind of said, it's interesting how you can make it work. What might have taken you a really long time before, you somehow managed to like, because then I started leaving. I mean, we had a nanny for a while, and then they were in daycare, which was great. It was Disney daycare, and they stayed open as long as the studio was open. So I was really fortunate to get that because I could stay at work and I could pick them up, I think, as late as 7 or 8, but I never did or rarely did. And then same with the nanny. And it's just funny that you think you can't possibly squeeze it all in, but then somehow you do. And I enjoyed talking with her about that because we were very much the same in terms of our work patterns. And
Mhm.
then once we had kids, it's like, well, okay, now we have to leave by 6 o'clock or 5:30 or whatever time.
Right. No, you become more efficient, multitask, and get things done because you have something waiting at home to start your second career when you got home. So,
Yeah.
oh, that's
And
interesting.
also maybe I don't recall this, but maybe some things don't have to get done. Like some things that
Yeah.
people worry about so much, and you're like, well, really, it's not so critical.
It made you have it with a different lens because that's a really important point. And thank you for bringing that up.
But you're making me think of one other thing that used to make me laugh.
Go
W-
ahead.
We had this wonderful kind of Mary Poppins nanny the first few years that we shared with a neighbor.
Mhm.
And she was so funny because I usually didn't come home during the day, but a couple times I stopped by for some reason, and there were toys everywhere, and the kitchen was a mess, and blah blah blah. And then I would get home at 5:36, whatever time. House was neat, kids were fed, bathed, all this stuff, and I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know. That's where I was like, I don't know if I could do that. And mind you, that was her job. That was her full-time job. But still, that impressed me because I think if when my husband David would get home, he'd probably see the house a mess still and the kids not bathed. I mean, it wasn't really like that, but you know what I mean.
No, I know what you
I
mean, but
fully
also
recognized like how, and she never seemed frantic. She was always very calm. So that to me is a special skill set that not
it is
everybody
special.
has.
Yes, but she also got to clock out, which is when you have the 24/7 on you, you know that you won't clock out. So no, but that's a very, very good point. Before we get going to returning back to your job, outside of the home, when you had the babies, was there anything that you didn't expect, just in general about being a new mom that, you've read the books, you've talked to your friends, but like before you returned, when you were, with your baby or babies, was there something that really like you wish somebody would have told you? Like it just it wasn't something you expected at all. It could be how you felt. It could be anything.
Well, the one thing that really stands out is, and I was warned. My bestie Holly, she said, bring your expectations way, way down in terms of what you get done, but you still think I've got plenty of time, especially when there were 2 of them and they're 16 months apart. Just to get out the door was
Yes.
like really a challenge. I could not believe how long it took me. And it's not like I was just sitting around or anything. And that was probably the biggest surprise. And people did warn me. Like people said that, like I said, bring your expectations way, way down in terms of what you get done. And also, everybody's different. Some people are more efficient than I am or whatever. But I do think that's an important thing to remember. If you're working outside the home, you're used to usually being in kind of a maybe not high energy, but in a situation where you're kind of always doing stuff and getting stuff done and being productive. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, it took me all morning just to get them dressed to get out the door. So I don't know. That was my
That's a
experience.
really that's no, that's I've never heard it explained like that, and in my experience too, yeah, when you're by yourself in the office, yeah, you're depending on another adult, but when you're depending on another child, your whole schedule gets pulled to the side. So that's a
Yeah.
really good point. Returning to your job, how many months off did you get? Did you take for maternity leave?
Well, I think the first pregnancy took, I think I took like 4 months. Like it was pretty, I thought it was pretty long. I thought it was pretty good. The second
Yeah.
one, I didn't have quite as much banked. But they also had the Family Leave Act, so we
Mhm.
took advantage of that. So maybe it was a little less than 4 months, but I still think it was pretty long. So the good thing about it was when it was time to go back to work, I felt pretty good about it. I mean, I was nervous about leaving, like, the first daughter, alone for the first time.
Yeah.
With the nanny, that made me really nervous. I went to a movie and I could barely remember it because I was thinking about it the whole time. But my point is that I think I had long enough where I didn't feel like, oh my God, it's way too soon. It's way too soon. I felt pretty good about it. And I had everything in place with someone to take care of the kids and stuff like that.
That's incredible. So your emotional transition, other than feeling nervous, you felt ready, or did you wish you had more time?
No, I mean, I might be remembering it with rose colored glasses, but I think I mean, of course, you always want more time with your kids.
Yeah.
But harking back to what I said before, I mean, it is hard. And in some ways, going to work was outside the home was almost easier. So,
Yeah,
as
you
much as I love spending time with them, it was really nice to get that break
yeah, you had
of
different
going
mental
to work.
stimulation and a break, 100%. I
Yeah.
that's wonderful. When you return to work, let's talk about your workplace support. First of all, Disney daycare. I wish I want to go to Disney daycare now. That just sounds very fun, but that's so incredible. How can you tell me about the daycare? Like how far away it was? You already said the hours. It was, it wasn't. It didn't end at like 3 or 4 p.m. So just talk a little bit how that made you feel and the setup because that sounds incredible.
Well, funny because it was a lottery system
Okay.
and I didn't think we were going to get in. So we
Mhm.
went ahead and booked something at a local synagogue, which meant I would have to pick them up at noon, which mean because the nanny at the time didn't drive. So that would mean I'd have to leave work, pick them up, bring them home, meet her here. And then at the last minute, they said, we have space for your kids. I was so thankful because it was 5 minutes from my office. Like I said, they followed the Disney hours. So if the studio's open, the daycare was open. And they had events like every other daycare, and they were actually really good. Like they had really well-trained people. I didn't have to worry about, they were right there. They were 5 minutes away.
That's incredible.
Really, I couldn't have been more lucky. I didn't have to drive far. I didn't have to pick them up in the middle of the day, nothing like that. So, I mean, I
That's
could go see them, but
yeah, that must have really made you be able to focus maybe more in your current position knowing that your kids were so close and taken care of and you
yeah.
get them yeah, that's an incredible support. Prior to them being
Well,
in daycare. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say one thing that, this is typical, as you know. There was a while they were dropping Sophie off the first few times. She would cry, and I would feel really bad, and I wouldn't want to have to go to work, and I'd feel guilty. And then finally, one of the women who ran the place, she said, if she cries all day, we'll tell you. So that made me feel a lot better. Like that they're right. There's not like probably 3 minutes after I left, she would stop crying. But I
Yeah.
didn't know that until she said, don't worry. If she's crying all day, we're gonna tell you. So
That's an that's a good point. No, getting updates and knowing that they'll update you makes you feel a lot better. I think I might have traumatized you a little bit because didn't you have to drop me off when I was, like, in kindergarten
that
and I
was
didn't wanna
horrible. I felt so bad. You weren't crying. You just wouldn't let go of my pant leg.
poor thing. So, yeah, well, you know,
No,
it
I
gave
felt
you
bad for you.
it gave you a good experience.
Yes, yes.
Prior to going to the daycare, though, like, your first day, if you can remember, your first day coming back after you had your oldest, talk to me about that emotion. I mean, what, you know, the emotion, but also how did it take you to, like, switch your brain? Because it's mental gymnastics, and you're going back into work after being a whole different person, like, you've changed. So, how was that transition the first couple days or weeks when you returned to work after your firstborn?
Again, I just feel like I keep saying I'm so fortunate. I mean, I would obviously worry. And it was also new, like going to work and then coming home and having a baby.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing that was really helpful for me.
Uh-huh.
And it's something I would, if people have the opportunity, I would suggest you can do it. We, as you may recall, we shared that nanny with the people that lived down the street because they had a daughter who was 4 days apart and had no, and they were in and out of, they didn't work outside the home all day, wife and the husband. So they were right there. So that gave me a great sense of comfort knowing that they were literally down the street. And if something, we had it at our house,
Yeah.
but I knew that they were right down the street. So honestly, I think like nanny sharing or whatever you want to call it is
Yes.
something I would recommend.
That's a
But
great idea.
yeah, but I mean, I honestly, I don't remember. I'm sure that it was strange, but I think by the time I went back to work and we had already set it up with the nanny and I knew her and I knew our neighbors and I just felt a much greater level of comfort. So, yeah, coming home and then dealing with it for the rest of the evening was maybe a challenge at first, but I wouldn't say it was like this big dichotomy between being at work and then coming home. Being at work outside the home and then coming home, if that makes sense.
That's that makes sense, and I think you shared some really good nuggets and great advice for expecting parents is really setting up, not waiting till the last minute, but setting up that childcare where you feel comfortable. And I agree. You recommended nanny share. We had done nanny share when we were in LA too, and it economically helped us as well. So having that set up, having that comfort probably helped you focus in your role. I know not everyone is as lucky for that because childcare can be, you know, it's been hard to find good childcare. So that's really good as much as you can in the future plan. That's really good advice. If you I know this is kind of like a hypothetical that you can't answer 100%, but could you imagine not maybe having like a nanny or having to drop them in daycare where you weren't as comfortable? That probably would have caused a lot more stress there because that's where a lot of mothers now are in that situation. So I'm just
Oh,
trying.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I would. I mean, that's why I keep saying,
Yes.
like, all down the line how lucky I was. But yeah, that would have been, I mean, as it was, obviously, you're always going to worry about your kids when you
Yeah.
can't see them as much as you want to get away from them sometimes. But yeah, that would have been a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But yeah, I think
And it makes you, I believe it would affect your productivity at your work outside the home. And, because if all you're doing is worrying about your kids, then yeah.
yeah. No, and I really think we should advertise nanny share more because not just for the economics that you're sharing a nanny and the cost, but the kids have a play date, socialization, but also like you said, there's another set of parents where obviously you're going to have to know them before you set up the nanny share, but you know that there's like another set of hands in case of an emergency. So I think that's a really good point that you brought up that really, adds points in the bucket for a nanny share. So thanks for sharing that. When you're coming back, like I remember, for example, when my first couple days coming back into the work, it just like there were things that, it's like going back to a or starting a new job all over again, sometimes with your brain, because your brain maybe for like 2, 3, 4 months hasn't looked at these types of documents or just kind of, if there's been some new technology or any updates in the company, how long did it take you to feel comfortable, like just in the routine of your job again? Because it is a transition.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of complicated by the fact that there was yet another transition in our department. So when I came back, I did have a different role. So that was like just getting used to a whole new, even if I hadn't had the kids, like
Right.
getting used to a whole different set of rules. And I think I was more worried about how I was going to handle that role
Hmm.
than it had less to it had less to do with now my mind is divided and more to do with wait, they have put me in a new role. Is this good? Is this bad?
Yeah.
That was a little bit difficult, but I can't honestly say it was just a result of coming back to work after having the kids,
No, that
if
makes
that
sense.
makes sense.
No, that makes
Yeah.
complete sense. Is there anything in the of course, they followed all the, laws and everything like that. Is there anything that your workplace or of your other friends that you think just in that time setting, in that time when you return to work, there could have been more support towards mothers from your company or from when you heard feedback from others, just something to make it a little better coming back into the place of business? And you don't have to if you don't.
Disney, I mean, Disney honestly is pretty like in that, at least when I was there. I can't speak for it now, but when I was there, I would say they were supportive. They were. It doesn't mean I
Right.
always like my bosses or whatever, but they
No.
were, as a company, they were supportive. The thing is, it's hard for me to, because none of my other friends or people I mean, the only other people I really knew who had kids that were around the same time were people I worked with at Disney. So I can't really speak for how it was for other people in other companies.
Right. No, that's fair. When you were taking a little step back, when you were talking about division of duties in the household between you and your husband,
Mhm.
when you were on maternity leave, you don't have to go into specifics, but was there an equitable distribution? Did you feel, sometimes mothers feel like innately, not that the other partner is not doing the work, but they feel like they have to do more or they're not speaking up. Like every couple is different and the distribution, everything is different. But how was just the distribution of chores and childcare when you were on
Well,
maternity
I
leave?
mean, I have to admit, I probably at times felt a little resentful, and that is not really fair because David, my husband, is a really good father and has done so much with the kids. But at that time, he still worked in Century City and it was far away and he was doing some traveling. So he wouldn't get home until later anyway. I mean, it wasn't his fault, it was just the way it was.
Right.
So by the time he got home, often, they'd already eaten and, they were bathed and in bed. So, yeah, I did do the lion's share. And I kind of say that being resentful, I mean, I think it's natural, but it was kind of unfair because if the tables were turned and I was the one working really long hours and having to drive an hour each way, um, I would kind of expect that he would be doing all the things that I was doing, if that makes sense.
No,
So,
that makes great I think that's really fair, and I think sometimes it's a really important thing to say, so I appreciate you bringing it up because that happens vice versa, exactly how you said. But when he did get home, did you feel like there was equitable like, was there sharing of duties, not just with the kids, but just the home or any conversations? Did you have any conversations going in like, "Hey, this is I know you're working all these hours, but when you get home, it would help to do this?" Like, did you have conversation about things that need to be done around the house? And it's okay to say no.
no, yeah, I don't know that we really talked about it that much because, I mean, the good thing is things kind of just naturally happened.
Yes.
I laugh now, but obviously the kids are grown. It has nothing to do with kids. But like as a partnership or whatever, a
Right.
couple, you kind of fall into whatever. So like David vacuums all the time
Yeah.
and does all this stuff like that. I take the trash out and I put the trash,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I kind of feel like it was sort of the same at the time. The
Mhm.
only difference being that, yeah, I mean, it's hard sometimes to be with kids all the time. Like, as much as I love them, just to be with them, just mentally. And some people are really cut out for that. I'm not sure that I am. And that's why I go back to saying going back to work wasn't a huge struggle for me because I felt like I was ready.
No,
That's
and
all.
I thank you for being so honest because, like you just said, first of all, everyone is different, and that's what makes humanity beautiful. But, I have friends who there's no way they could be a stay-at-home mom because they need to go out so they can be a better mom and fill their cup when they come home and be present. So everything's different. And I think it's really important that you said it's really hard to be home with a kid all day because you can't just turn your brain off. It's always going. You have to be present. You're
Mhm.
giving so much energy even though it doesn't feel like it sometimes. And a lot of the time, what I hear with people I'm coaching or in seminars is, well, they work a lot of the time it's the husband. They'll say, they had a really long day at work, so, I get it. They need to relax when they get home. And part of the conversation is kind of like, absolutely, they've had a long day, they need to relax, but the person who is also the mom, like, there needs to be a conversation there so they can turn off they need a break too. It's not that, one side. So I think it's great that you're highlighting all this. When you returned to Disney, um, after maternity leave, did anything shift in the duties and how they were, handling? I know that you had a nanny share, but did anything shift, or was there anything that added to any more burnout or anything that you wanna discuss?
Well, again, I feel like I'm not being fair to David. I think women in particular tend to, like you said earlier, I think, like, feel like you just have to do this. Like, you
Yeah,
have to get dinner ready or you have to, whatever it is, clean the kitchen. I don't know.
right.
And again, I had to really check myself because if I started feeling any kind of resentment, I realized, well, I'm the one that's putting this pressure on myself. Nobody else is doing that to me. And not him, not anybody. But I think I've said this before and I apologize to all men in advance cuz everybody's different, but I do kind of feel like when women are working outside the home and they have young kids, generally speaking, the lion's share of like domestic duties still the expectation is that it's the woman handling it. And
100%.
again, I want to be really careful saying that because there clearly are so many men who really do a lot. But I'm just saying, generally speaking, I think that is the expectation.
I think you said it really well, the expectation, and we see it in the way that our society applauds those men. Like, they said, "Oh, what an involved father. They're doing daddy daycare. They're showing up for the PTA," or, and moms are doing that every single day. But because the expectation is the moms to be at the pediatricians, the moms. So it's a
Yeah.
thing and a discussion that society has to bring up. It's not knocking men like you said, it's society, but it's also internal feeling like we have to take on. I went through the exact same thing. And I remember my husband was really saying, well, why don't you just tell me what to do? And I would say, well, I shouldn't have to tell you what to do. But when we take on the stuff, we don't make lists and we need to talk about it more. But I think it's a great point. Talk about before your career changed to domestic engineer, when you were working at Disney and you have 2 toddlers, what type of burnout did you experience?
It's so hard. I think we just sort of forget things. It's like, they say you forget the pain of pregnancy. I think it's kind of the same. I don't remember feeling, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't remember feeling burned out. I do remember maybe feeling like antsy, like maybe I
Yeah.
became more sort of nervous in general about, everything.
Yeah.
Because instead of like focusing on the thing at hand, you start thinking about, well, the kids are this and there's that and da da da. So maybe not burnout, but just being more nervous, if that.
That makes sense, and your mind constantly running, like, it can't kind of just shut off because it's jumping.
Uh-huh.
So that's really fair. Okay, so our switch to the domestic engineer, which I always like saying CEO of your household, but then when I saw your LinkedIn profile, I really like domestic engineer when you decided to become a full-time domestic engineer. Can you talk about, how did you first come to define that role, domestic engineer? Because I love it. So I kind of want you to talk about why you put that as your title because it's genius.
Well, thank you. I think that I got laid off at Disney.
Mhm.
And so I kind of was half of the mindset that I would go back to work. But then the other set was, it was right at an age where they were starting like middle school or early high school, I think. Anyway, it seemed like a good time to maybe not work for a while outside the home.
Thank you.
And yeah. And also, there is an economic aspect to it that unless I got a job that paid well enough to have daycare or a nanny or someone picking up the kids, it didn't really make sense.
Yeah.
So there's definitely an economic aspect to it. But the reason I said domestic engineer was honestly because I wasn't ready to say that I was retiring because that wasn't really my plan. Um, And but I thought, well, I'm not working outside the home, but I do work inside the home. And that's kind of how I came up with it. So,
Well, I love domestic engineer when I saw that, and I think it's great because you didn't retire. You were working full time as a domestic engineer, and that needs to be recognized. So talk to like what was amazing about this career transition to being a full time domestic engineer. What were the challenges, or and the biggest hardship that you really didn't expect? Just talk about that whole experience because that was a big change.
yeah, it was a big change. I don't, um, the positives were obvious. I got to spend more time with them at an age when like personalities are, well, they were developed by then, but they're at an age where things really start changing, preteens and teenager and stuff like that. And 2 girls, and spending more time. And I would always go to every event or try to go to every event. But, being able to do that without worrying about, "Oh my gosh, I have to go to back to my work outside of the home."
Hmm.
And, I guess the the strangest part for me was that I literally have worked since I was 13, whether it was cleaning houses or babysitting and then getting jobs, like it's like clothing store and stuff. But so that was really strange for me, not having a job to go to outside of the home. That was a
That
little
would,
bit weird.
yeah.
But there's always a lot going on, like in terms of their schools and outside school activities and all that kind of stuff. And also, we used to joke about how, like during the summers when I was still working outside the home, I cannot tell you the number of camps that they would have to go to over the summer
Yeah.
because, I mean, they were like shorter day campy things,
Mhm.
but because not all of them would go the whole summer, you'd have to go, oh, this one for 2 weeks and this one for 4 weeks and this one. And it was kind of nice not having to deal with all of that. Like, we still wanted them to do fun and creative stuff, but not having to. I mean, I would be on edge. I kind of forgot about that. Like figuring out, oh my God, who can take them for the very beginning of summer, and the middle of summer, and the end of summer.
That's a good
So
point.
that was kind of nice.
That's great. Any hardship that you rarely talk about that was really hard for you in that transition?
I mean, I really do think the biggest thing was not going to a job outside the home. I was really, and not getting a paycheck, quite frankly.
There we go.
You know, yeah, that's a
That's a
weird one.
that's a very yes, and I thank you for saying that because you are bringing so much value, but not getting it can mess with you.
Yeah, yeah.
Regarding duties, did anything change in the division of labor when you became a full-time engineer?
Well, not really. I mean, by that time, they were, like I said, I think they were in middle school or,
Mhm.
yeah, seventh grade, something like that. So it didn't really change that much. I mean, I do believe, and this is going to sound like I'm contradicting what I said earlier, but it's not. I was not working outside the home at that point.
Mhm.
David, my husband, was.
Mhm.
So I kind of feel like it would be my responsibility to make sure that dinner's on the table.
Right.
And I know a lot of people feel like, oh, we should share it, but everyone's different. But my thinking is, I'm the one that's at home. I can go to the store. I can do, stuff that he can't do when he's working late. And again, I only want to emphasize that if the tables were turned, that would be my expectation of him.
Like, I think you just said every couple's different, every person's different, and what it's just about having an understanding and feeling that there is, both contributing to the household. So I think that's a really good point. So I do, part of my work is making the invisible visible. Was there things when you became a full-time domestic engineer that you felt like you were carrying, that you were fine to carry it, but like you just felt like it was so invisible that sometimes you didn't even like, it could be the mental load, it could be bouncing from topic to topic, just something that you did that you felt was invisible to a lot of people, or the amount that it took to do, the amount of energy it took to do was invisible.
Well, the honest answer is not really, but I do know what you mean because I feel like when they were younger, even though I was working outside the home, I do feel like whether it was when I was on maternity leave or went back to work,
Mhm.
that's when I really realized how much work goes into that people don't. I mean, it's like that that joke. I'm sure you're sorry. I just have to tell you that um, there's a couple and the is a stay-at-home mother or whatever. The husband goes to work and every day he would come home or one day he comes home and the kids are outside playing in the mud. The house is a mess. There's no dinner made. And he was like, "What did you do today?" And she said, "You know how you ask me every day what I did?" She goes, "Well, today I didn't do it."
That's a very good point because there is so many things that are invisible.
Yeah,
Unless you
yeah.
do.
So he
Yeah.
would come home every day and the house would be clean, the kids would be bathed and fed, and, every dinner's ready. And he'd be like, "Oh, what'd you do all day?" Well, I didn't do it today. Saying that I started realizing that those are maybe the invisible things that people, I mean, regardless of, I mean, I still think it falls primarily on the woman, but regardless of who's doing it, people think, oh, well, you had all day. And it's like, uh, really? Yeah. So,
Right. I'm working on to share with other mothers like an Excel sheet because sometimes it's writing, like what they said, what did you do all day? Writing everything down and not just lumping it like household chores, because grocery shopping, there's a list prior that has to be made to go to grocery shopping. There's unpacking the grocery shopping, there's meal planning, and that takes time. It's not like 30 minutes, and driving, pickup, and emotional support for the kids. So I think that's really important that you said that. So there was a transition. Both of your daughters went to university, and have left the nest when returned. Talk about your role, because a mother and a parent's job is never done. But what does your role right now as a domestic engineer look like?
Well, our older daughter is living at home and working, and I'm delighted that that is
Yeah.
happening. She doesn't have to move anytime soon, as far as I'm concerned. And that's something I've realized, like, a lot of parents, I feel like over the years have said, yeah, when they're 18, they're out of the house. I mean, I don't think people do that as much now, but I'm thinking, why? They're ultimately going to move out. So why not enjoy as much time as you can, unless they turn into freeloaders? But she's not.
Exactly.
So I'm totally fine with that. And I mean, I would say the division of household duties is it's pretty equal. I don't, well, one thing that was interesting was when COVID hit,
Yes.
I had my secret 6 hours or whatever it was time between dropping the girls off and picking them up, or them driving there and coming back. And David going to work. And I was like, oh my God, everyone's going to be home. This is horrible. I really did think that. Like, but you know what? It ended up really being fine. I think everyone was old enough
Hmm.
that, well, the girls, everyone just went to their separate areas and did what they had to do. And it actually worked out well. But the reason I'm bringing that up is that since then, David doesn't, he works out of the house. He doesn't
Yeah,
go to his job. So I mean, he has work to do. He's busy, but he also will wash the dishes, or now it just sort of naturally, no one does more than the other, honestly.
that's great.
Yeah.
That's really good to know, and that's interesting, the COVID twist to it, because I think a lot of families went through the same thing, like, "Oh my gosh, everyone's gonna be in the same house." So it's good to know that everyone went, to their own ways, and that they were of an older age where they didn't, pull on your shirt, "Mommy, mommy, mommies," because everyone had
Well,
different.
I felt really bad for the people that, like David's business partner, that their kids were like kindergarten and stuff, and it was like, oh my God, how are you doing this with, and having to help your kids, negotiate Zoom? And again, I guess I'm the luckiest person alive, because I'm so thankful they were old enough that they could handle it themselves. So,
I love your attitude. You have a very positive attitude, and I think that really translates in seeing all the ways that you are lucky. So thank you for saying that. And I think it's also great because not everyone was always in the same situation, so it makes other people be like, "Oh wow, she realizes she was lucky in that scenario." So I think that's truly great. Your advice for companies supporting mothers, you came from a great experience, but is there something you would recommend to any company for a mother, who is pregnant, going on leave and returning?
well, I think probably the biggest one that everyone sort of feels strongly about is having more time.
Mhm.
I mean, I think I was appalled to learn um, how quickly people, I mean, I don't remember how much time you had, but generally
4.
how
I
quickly
took
people,
4. 4 and a half.
4 months.
4 and a half,
Oh,
and that
okay.
was good
Yeah,
compared
no, that
to
is
my
good.
European counterparts who were taking 9 months, which I think is much better, but yes. But yeah, I had 4 and
Oh, yeah, no, but there are people that go back in like 6 weeks or something.
it's
And
mortifying.
maybe some of them want to, but I think a lot of times and that I don't think I would have been ready in any less time than the 4 or so months that I had. So
I agree with
that
you.
would be my biggest, and then understanding, whether it's man or a woman, that, when people have families, they need to take care of those families. And I don't know, not to be more lenient, because I know people that don't have kids
Mhm.
sometimes feel like they're getting a short shrift, like they're not getting the same. So you obviously have to be equitable, but I mean, the fact is, we are a society of people that have kids, and we want population to grow and well, sort of, but, to give them, to give them the ability to take care of those kids.
Without the
You know,
anxiety.
yeah, and companies are so driven by profit now, which I get, but a lot is being lost, I think, and I'm not even talking in terms of family care, maternity leave, or anything, just in general. I feel like people are really getting screwed, and now if you're talking about someone who's just had a kid, it's not good.
I think that's really what you just said is their profit, but I think that's very like short-term profit because when I graduated law school, 52% of my graduating class were female. But if you look across my age spectrum right now, a lot of women were taken off the partners track or have left because
Um,
they weren't going to get promoted. And so they ended up consulting or doing their own law firms or, doing things where they make it work and they are very efficient. It's just the time constraints with pickups with children and daycare. And so I think that's a really good point in diversity in general. But when companies see like the international dispute resolution company, I saw so many women who were pregnant, went on leave, came back, VPs, vice presidents that were there for many years who were mothers. And so I was never afraid to go on maternity leave. Like they understood there was not leniency, but okay, if you have an event at night, come in a little later because you have childcare. There's ways that you can understand or having visibility with the C suite. A lot of moms can't go to happy hour. So coming to lunch. So having those conversations because you don't want to lose the next generation of women because that's what people are looking at, and I think it's a good point. One thing I do part of my work are listening audits to go into organizations and ask employees in general what's working, what's not working, and sometimes doing that specifically for mothers. What's a question in your viewpoint that I should be asking mothers in companies? Is there any question that you wish you were asked or that I could ask mothers that are in companies?
well, I mean, I think you've kind of covered a lot of it in this podcast that,
Yep.
you know, the emotional stress. Do you wish you had more time? Well, probably everyone's going to say, yes, I do. But how can you help someone to be able to focus? Because if the whole point is for them to be productive at their work
Right.
outside the home, how can the companies help them to focus more? I mean, that's why, like, that Disney daycare, that was a big deal because,
Big time.
yeah. And, not every company can afford to offer that kind of care, but there's got to be some in betweens,
Yeah.
about
Yeah. No, I
how
agree
you
with.
can take that because if the bottom line is to try to help the company be as profitable and productive as possible, then that's something that really does benefit them to look at.
Right, because having employees, the longevity, that saves money instead of having to
To
retrain
retrain,
yeah,
yeah,
and rehire, recruit, that's a huge thing, that's great.
yeah.
Part of, my work is making the invisible work visible, like I said, and I think what you said was really great that you and David kind of fell naturally into, helping each
Certain
other out, working like if one person does that, the other person, and there was no communication, which I think that's probably a big reason why you chose to marry him. And I think you were very smart for marrying him and stuff because that's not a reality with a lot of couples. One thing that, with my law background, I've been thinking is if you and David, or if you recommend, like if it was Chloe or Sophie one day when they're pre-baby, they're pregnant, sitting down and making like a contract or listing out the duties or just kind of having an awareness of everything that has to be done in the home to just kind of agree or have some sort of agreement like there's a prenup. Do you think there should be a pre-baby agreement?
I think that really depends on the couple. I think it might
Hmm.
really work well for some people. The
Hmm.
one thing you're reminding me of is several times I wrote down when the girls were old enough to do things, they weren't babies. I started writing down tasks that they needed to do. And it was terrible. I never stuck to it. And every single time it was like, here's this list of tasks. And then somehow it would go by the wayside. But my point being that I do think that can be really, really helpful. Again, in terms of between the couples, it might help what you talked about, making the invisible visible,
Yeah.
because they hear all the things that have to be done.
Yeah.
But again, a lot of it depends on how people work things out. But
Right.
anyway, sorry. I think in general, writing things down can really be helpful. You
Right.
kind of have to stick to it.
You have to
But at
stick.
least, yeah, but at least in this case, like what I just said and what you said, is that especially in the case where one person is working outside the home, one person is inside the home, it makes it more obvious what happens inside the home. Because you're right, that gets lost all the time.
Right, and it could be pre-baby counseling. I think a lot of the time, so many couples go into it thinking, okay, we know certain things, but there's so much more, like preschool. Like I remember I called and I made the list. I got all the supplies, and I turned around and I said, "Why am I doing this?" And the facility goes, "I don't know. Why are you doing that all on your own?" I felt like I had to, but there was a list of things that I was doing, and just for the next generation, just like some people go to premarital counseling, all that entails, because a lot of time people are like, oh, they worked and that person sat at home, and there's nothing sitting about being at home.
Yeah.
Financial recognition, you hit on this, but do you think that domestic engineers, twofold, should receive a salary from their collective, from their home income, whatever's being brought in to the home? And do you think there should be a retirement account?
A retirement account? You mean like
For the
for the
domestic
person that,
engineer, let's say in this case, the mother was the one who was the domestic engineer, and I'm not saying the father, whatever the father brings in, it's their money, because if you wrote down all the work she did, she would be bringing a lot of value. If you had to pay a house cleaner, a cook, all these things, it would add up. But do you think that there should be an account that is put, even if they can't afford a lot, just a little of it being a retirement account for her, and a salary where she puts into a separate account? It could be even little, but something like that where there's some financial recognition.
I don't think you're going to like my answer, but I
No.
think that is really, that's like a personal choice,
Mhm,
because it's hard for me to say if I had never worked from the moment we had kids. That would be one thing, but I
mhm,
did work for a long time and I did have a retirement account, et cetera, et cetera. But if a couple sat down and said, okay, one person is going to stay home and the
mhm.
other person is going to work outside the home, I would assume that they would discuss, okay, financially, how are we going to do this?
Yeah,
Because, I mean, okay, worst case scenario, it's a wife, let's say, and we know that this has happened in the past, leaves her.
yeah,
And she now, meanwhile, has not worked outside of the home for 15 years and has no money. Yeah, that's a bad situation. So, I mean, I guess it's something that every couple should discuss,
I agree. Yeah,
and you're right. It's kind of like a prenup. And people say about prenups, oh, that means you don't trust me. But it's not that. It's that you don't know what the eventuality is.
yeah.
So, better to be prepared. So, I guess
Right,
my
and
answer is
yeah,
yeah. I mean, I still think that's a personal choice, but I do understand what you're saying, that some person, one of the two, could be left out in the cold. And we know that happens.
it happens a lot, and by that time, I'm an attorney. I know attorneys who have claimed to not have money and they can hide the money. There's a lot of things that happen, and the person who was the domestic engineer gets shut out in the cold. But also the sense of, like what you said, it was very weird for not having a paycheck, and it could be something, it's just their own separate account, not to pay bills, not to do the child, like the groceries, but
Right.
something where it's, not if we get divorced and things are split up, because you never know what's going to happen, but more of feeling like I'm doing something that's bringing monetary value to us. And it could be a small amount, whatever the couple decides, but being put into a separate account for that person so they feel, you know, their independence because they are bringing value. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think that's
No, I
it's
mean,
just good things to have conversations about, I think. Yeah.
I agree. I could not agree more that especially when a couple decides up front, one person is going to stay home. I was going to
Yeah.
be a domestic engineer and the other one's going to bring a outside paycheck. I definitely think that's something that you need to consider
Yeah, I
or
think
at least discuss. Yeah.
a conversation. Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
like, there is no right or wrong answer. I really like and enjoy hearing everybody's perspectives on that. So I think it's wonderful. Hi, welcome back to this episode of the Womenemies Podcast. We had a technical difficulty with our podcast. It happens sometimes. We were doing a remote interview and the last part of the video didn't upload. So I sent Carol Gaynes, the remaining questions because she was traveling because her daughter just graduated from Smith University. Congratulations. And she answered them via email, so I'm going to read them out to you, okay? So, women and mothers often place themselves at the bottom of the priority list. What was put on hold? It could be hobbies, health, friendships, appointments, personal time. And here is the response from Carol. I would say all of the above were put on hold to a certain degree. But in terms of friends, I would like to say that good friends understand that your time is limited when you have a child. Well, when you first have a child. And that it will change as the child gets older. And a follow-up question was returning to yourself. How did you begin bringing back those parts of yourself that you had put on hold? When we got someone to help in the house when I returned to working outside the home, that gave me some more flexibility. For example, going to the gym at lunch hour. And then of course, as the girls got older and more self-sufficient, things are a little bit less demanding on the parent. Next question, self-talk. What was a negative thought you had about yourself that, looking back, was unfair? Carol's response. Mainly that I was shocked, still am frankly, at how long it took for me to get anything done when the girls were babies. Just getting out of the house was a challenge, and I was irritated with myself for being so slow. We can all mothers can understand that. We need to be a lot more gentle with ourselves because if we actually really do write down everything we're doing to get them out of the house, it takes a lot of time and effort and emotional stamina. All right. Advice for the next generation. What advice would you give the next generation of mothers? As my good friend said to me at the time, lower your expectations. A lot. She put that in all capitals. In terms of what you will get done. It goes hand in hand with my answer up to number 11 that was just about self-talk and that it's going to take us a longer time to get out of the house and to be more gentle with ourselves and, complimentary of ourselves. And she also says, and of course, try not to worry so much about everything. And the final question was a message to your younger self. What compliment would you give your younger self as a new mother that you deserved to hear at the time? And Carol's response was, I don't know if this is really a compliment, but I really did enjoy being pregnant and took it in stride. That is a compliment, Carol, because you did enjoy your pregnancy, you were glowing and you were appreciative. And as much as I knew you at the time as your niece, I saw how much you enjoyed it and were appreciative of it. So with that, we're ending our podcast for this episode. And Carol, I would like to thank you, Carol, for your time, sharing your experience, your advice, your thoughts, and adding some humor to this podcast. I wish everyone a wonderful, wonderful day, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.